All right, we got more from DeMeco Ryans at the owners' meetings. DeMeco Ryans, head coach of the Houston Texans. Media types caught up with him, and he talked about something that's been a popular, polarizing topic around here for a long, long time. It's a word that all football coaches use. It's an area in which the Texans have failed miserably in the last couple of years, and that is the C word, culture. Culture was something that for a while Jack Easterby was overseeing. There was a time when on his bio on the website, oversees the culture of the organization was the first sentence. I think after all the mocking and ridiculing of that, they kind of changed the bio a little bit. And eventually you saw perhaps the biggest fraud in the history of the NFL, Jack Easterby. You saw Jack Easterby pushed out. And now people hope, many people believe that substance when it comes to culture is being brought to the Houston Texans in large part because of DeMeco Ryans. It is the locker room number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610 and the Odyssey app. Culture has been something that we've talked about for a while. For a while, there was claims that the Texans were trying to duplicate something that couldn't be duplicated in the Patriot way, Patriot South. Cal McNair made it a point when he brought in Caserio to say, we don't consider ourselves Patriot South. We're trying to build our own culture. And you had a guy who came from New England in Jack Easterby and Bill O'Brien that thought that they could bring that culture with them. Jack Easterby would walk around with notes on Bill Belichick. He once claimed that he was Robert Kraft told him that he could clone Bill Belichick. Told me that 5 feet away from me. I don't think you can duplicate culture. And I think we've seen that with New England with guys who have tried to do that and they failed successfully. I think you got to implement your own culture. I think culture comes with substance. Culture isn't a quote. Culture isn't, putting a quote on the scoreboard. Culture is substance. Culture is sweat equity. Culture comes in different forms. Culture comes through leadership. And DeMeco Ryans, with how his former teammates talk about him, how his players talk about him, and how he presents himself, it feels like he can have a positive impact on the culture. And here is DeMeco Ryans himself live at the owners' meetings talking about the polarizing yet important C word and what direction that's heading around here as DeMeco Ryans begins his tenure as Texans head coach.
You change the culture, what you change it's the people, right? It's bringing in guys who have been part of winning programs, and those guys establishing how do winners practice, right? How do winners work in the weight room? How do winners handle themselves off the field? And when you add those guys to your team, that's how the culture continues to change. And you come in, you add, younger college guys, draft guys, or undrafted free agents, and they just fall underneath that leadership of the guys that we've added. Was there something grand? And it's about the culture change is about the people. Right? We bring the right people in who have the right work ethic, the right mindset, and that's how the culture starts to shift. And that's how we build a winning program.
And I also, I wonder how flexible culture is. Like, can you bring a guy who's maybe not completely a finished product into your culture and, make him a culture guy? I think, you've also heard DeMeco Ryans talk about diverse backgrounds when it comes to experience. That's something that I think he's trying to do with his coaching staff as well. So it's not just one set way. A good culture is going to be something that has to have substance. It can't be just following someone around and trying to climb your way up a wall like what we've seen the last few years. I know that DeMeco Ryans says that he believes he can change the culture, and I believe DeMeco Ryans. And I think Nick Caserio probably feels the same way. I think if you gave Nick Caserio some truth serum and you asked him, how goofy was it to kind of see what you were walking into and what Jack Easterby thought he was, regardless of y'all's past relationship, I think he would admit that it was a little bit weird. But let's also be honest about this. It's also going to be about the players. You can talk culture, you can say all these things, and I can sit here and say, DeMeco Ryans was a leader. You're going to need players to win. I'm not breaking any news there. And the Texans this offseason, they've tried to add players. They have improved their roster, but they've done so without giving out 3-year contracts. They've been giving out the 2-year contracts. Many people have wondered, is that philosophical? What exactly is that? Here's DeMeco Ryans talking about the offseason philosophy when it comes to the Texans and acquiring and bringing in talent to add to the roster before the draft. By the way, we're 4 weeks away from that mofo. But here's DeMeco on the free agency before the draft process.
I want to pay a dollar for a B or C player, right? So you just have to have some discipline, and once the price gets to a certain point, you just have to be disciplined enough not to overreach. You want to add quality players to your team, but you don't want to overpay just because you're getting into a bidding war with the team. We're not going to overpay just to overpay. But the talent is the talent. That doesn't change.
Now, we look at this and we wonder, is this a philosophy? We're kind of figuring out about Caserio. We're figuring out about DeMeco. Like, is this some sort of philosophy? Like, if next year, are they going to be opposed to giving out, 3-year contracts? Also, NFL contracts don't last as long as they are usually. More times than not, a 5-year contract ends before 5 years. So I think we got to keep that in mind when we start criticizing the contracts. But I don't think this is something that's philosophical. I think this is going to be very fluid. And you look at this free agent class. I know there's teams like Chicago that are really excited. There's a strong possibility 2-3 years from now, we look back at this and a lot of these guys that Chicago is signing, they're on the market again because this was not a huge free agent class. The Texans did a good job of adding B players, as DeMeco Ryans indirectly said, which is not anything that you throw a parade about, but it's also got to be taken into account that maybe they had C or D players before. If Dalton Schultz has a good year, maybe Dalton Schultz gets a long-term deal. But, I heard Brooks Cabina when he came on with me earlier talk about, well, maybe you're going to have to pay Dalton Schultz after this year. How much? I don't think Dalton Schultz is going to go out there and get like a 3-year, $36 million deal. If you want to pay Dalton Schultz, you can pay Dalton Schultz, and he's already here. And some of these guys might establish themselves as important pieces, dare I say, culture guys as well. So I don't think this is like something to think is like some sort of philosophy. We'll learn what the philosophies are of DeMeco and Caserio. I'm really excited to see as time goes on if we can like get enough data to assess, what they like at certain positions. But at this point, we don't know. We're 4 weeks away from seeing these guys work together for the first time in a draft. And I don't think this 2-year thing is going to be like an ongoing philosophy. It could be, but I think it's an adjustment to the market and an adjustment to the market that didn't have a lot of A caliber players. So you didn't want to throw a lot of money at these guys and you improved your roster. So we'll see what happens. DeMeco on the culture, DeMeco on the philosophy of free agency. Other news today, outside of being 4 weeks away from the start of the draft, and it is opening day here for the Astros. Baseball is never going to be the same again. We're going to have a faster version of the game. I'm excited about that. It's also Anthony Richardson's Pro Day. And I will say, I'm thankful for a lot of things. I'm thankful that the Texans hired DeMeco Ryans. I'm thankful that the Texans appear to be on their way to getting hopefully a franchise quarterback. I'm thankful that they have a lot of draft picks, and I'm very thankful that they are not in position to where they have to really entertain the possibility of bringing in Anthony Richardson. I know there's a lot of people that are drinking the Anthony Richardson Kool-Aid. I am not one of those guys. I anticipate this is going to be a good pro day. It's more of an opportunity for Anthony Richardson to not have to play football, actual football, to improve his draft stock. I anticipate Carolina is going to continue to front. And then other teams are going to figure out what they want to do with this Anthony Richardson thing. But you see where Indianapolis is right now, where there's kind of some buzz with Lamar Jackson because they're on the outside of the Bryce Young, CJ Stroud thing, and they don't seem to want to invest in Willis and Richardson. If they do, man, that could get really interesting. But I am thankful as Anthony Richardson begins his pro day that the Texans are not, it appears, who knows, they could. Probably not. Definitely not. The Texans are not big time. And I mean, and we were what, a Chicago win, maybe a Kansas City win, maybe a Colts win, non-meltdown in week 1, to sitting here having to wonder, damn, is Anthony Richardson going to be the guy? The Texans just fell back a couple spots. Thank God we're not. Thank God the draft is 4 weeks away. And thank God that DeMeco Ryans is at least saying the right thing. Subscribe, like, listen to me. I'll be on today at 10 a.m. Fire up the Odyssey app. We got a lot of fun stuff in store for you. It's a fun time to be alive, no matter what happens, though, when it comes to the Texans, whether the culture's changed, whether the philosophy is the philosophy. When it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in this together. Have a good Friday.